So why this story is so interesting is Microsoft, as you said, is kind of one of the original hyperscalers, and they're sitting on really a nation state size investment pool. And the big question in the economy right now is, are all these data centers going to pay off? Are all these tens and hundreds of billions of dollars actually going to result in businesses that make margins that are worthwhile? And at Microsoft, Amy Hood has effectively become all powerful, right? You have a CFO who is making decisions about allocation of resources and data centers and who gets GPUs and where. And what we largely found is that she took a bit of a skeptical tone over the years. She took a bit of an anxious tone, even, that there were moments where she said, man, we really might be overspending here.
So she decided to dial back some of that spending. Was that a mistake in hindsight?
A lot of people would say it was. It was maybe about a year and a half ago. She looked at the numbers that folks were giving her and she said, I don't believe this demand. I question this demand. And, it's time to hit pause on a lot of these data center projects. And I don't know if you remember, but when this played out in public, it rattled the markets. Everybody saw this as, a sign that Microsoft was getting cold feet. And, we're able today to say that is what that indicated at that time. Of course, today, Microsoft is in the position of finding that, golly, we can't find enough data center capacity and our business is being held back by it. And so it seems clear that they undershot their demand projections. And, we're in a moment right now where industry consensus is spend as much as you can, as quick as you can on data centers. And I'm sure in 6 to 12 months, we'll talk again and the consensus will flip once again.
And because Microsoft is one of the OG hyperscalers, when Amy Hood decided to pull back a bit on spending, that not only caused questions in the market, but it caused other hyperscalers to kind of rethink their spending as well, didn't it?
Well, I think it actually created an opening in many cases. A lot of the sites that Microsoft walked away from, some of the younger rivals, think the CoreWeave, the Nebius, the Nscale, they kind of swooped in and said, man, we're ready to buy some data center capacity here. And I think all this kind of shows just how difficult it is right now for the big hyperscalers. I mean, they for a long time had a business model based around no assets, around software, that, hey, if you want to change your plans, you really just kind of have to reallocate some coding teams. And, you don't have these long-term fixed assets that depreciate over 10, 15 years. And now they're in the position of trying to act almost more like a Boeing or a GE, these kind of old industrial giants. And forecast out demand for a technology that's still emerging. It's a really tough balancing act, and I'd argue that there's nobody out there who has more directly on their plate in this than Amy Hood does.
I like the way you put that. They kind of went from, it feels like asset light to very asset heavy because they now own and oversee these big data centers. Does that mean that investors eventually will kind of re-rate these companies as well, given what they have on their balance sheet?
I sort of think we're seeing it happen already. I mean, Microsoft is down, lost about a quarter of its value over the last year, and I think a big part of that is the margin story. That, their margins have been pretty steady, but that's only because they've really been cutting in a lot of the other parts of the business, right? We write in the story that their cash cow businesses, let's call it like a Windows, have had a lot of cuts in them because this new AI business, the margins are so much lower, right? And so you had a company that was printing some of the craziest margins in the world, now renting out servers at a much lower margin and having all this, tens of billions of dollars of chips on their balance sheet. It does paint a different picture of a company, right? And the question is, are they going to keep spending this way in perpetuity? Are we in a phase? I think that leaders like Amy Hood are really charting in new territory and answering all this in real time.
The stock is down 25% year to date. Is Amy Hood feeling any pressure for some of her maybe decisions as it relates to AI spending?
Our understanding is a lot of folks in the company were not happy with her around the pause last year. That said, it wasn't our indicator that, hey, she's going to get the boot over this or something. All that said, she's been in the seat for 13 years. That's a long time for any CFO, and it's our understanding that there are starting to be succession conversations. We heard some names that were interesting. Chris Suh, the CFO over at Visa, a well-regarded figure over there, he's a name that comes up a lot because he used to be at Microsoft. He knows the business. He left and kind of gained skills and could be primed for a return. There's somebody named Matt McBride, who's kind of her internal heir apparent, right? I mean, his name will certainly be in the ring here. And so I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or two we're talking about, the great Microsoft CFO search. But at the same time, I don't think it's that, she screwed up a decision and now she's getting the can. That's not what's happening.